We're pleased to welcome now Senator Juan Barnett. He represents District 34, which includes Forest, Jasper, and Jones County. Serves as the chair of the Senate Corrections Committee. Senator Barnett, good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yes, sir. So the schedule today, you guys, I think I just got a notification. You went into session and then you're recessed until Monday. Monday. That's what I thought. Yeah. Well, you're kind of winding it down.
We are.
Yeah.
Just not fast enough.
Well, last year it seemed like a marathon with the extra month, the first year of the session, and everybody I talked to seemed pretty exhausted by about this point with a couple of months to go last year. So this year down to what, 3 weeks?
Down to 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. What's your take on the high-profile measures that have been shuffled back and forth at this point between the House, the Senate? It just feels like a lot of stuff is not really going anywhere.
That's what it seems like. But, as well as I do, it's not over until it's over.
Yeah.
Or as we said at the Capitol, it ain't dead until it's dead.
What about the Corrections Committee? What have you been focused on this session?
This session has been more focused on work release programs, a few more of those. One of the most exciting things is the fact that MDOT saw the need of how they could use some of these individuals to actually work for the Department of Transportation. So I think that was huge right there, to be incarcerated one day by the state of Mississippi and be employed the next day by the state of Mississippi. And this has always been the goal of mine, is to make sure that, these good people that made a bad mistake can get out and redeem themselves in society and become productive citizens. And, to be able to go and work for a governmental agency with benefits and those type of things is a whole lot better than a $20 and a bus ticket. And say, we wish you the best.
Yeah. Well, what's the status of any such legislation related to that?
It's moving. We have Senator Kerr. Representative Kerr and myself has agreed to go into conference on the bill. But everybody's in agreement. There's just a little bit of language change that we need to correct on the bill, and the governor and everybody's in favor of it. So hopefully, in the next couple of days, we'll be passing it out and sending it on to the governor for his blessings on it.
Gotcha. The House has, of course, announced early on, Speaker of the House, Jason White, that elimination of the income tax, as is contemplated in HB 1, was their top priority. And the Senate, of course, has its own version of some degree of tax reform. Those bills have changed sides, and I guess there's some discussion and meeting going on behind the scenes. What are your thoughts about those efforts?
I just hope at the end of the day, we know what's right and what's good for the citizens of Mississippi. I can agree with them on one thing, and that is that I agree that we definitely need to reduce the taxes on groceries. I would like to see a grocery tax at zero, because it's the most unfair tax there is in America, because everyone doesn't necessarily pay taxes on groceries. Some people are, maybe on some type of federal assistance where they just pay the price that's there and not have to pay taxes. But then there's others that have to pay taxes. But whether you're on federal assistance or not, if you buy a pair of gym shoes or if you buy a shirt or anything else there, then everybody is subject to the same taxes. But grocery is not the same. So I agree we need to cut the tax on groceries. I just hope that when we look at cutting income tax and those type of things, that we're looking past today and past tomorrow, and we're looking 20 years down the road, so that those who are coming behind us don't have to come and fix what we messed up today. And I'm just hoping they're looking that far when we talk about cutting taxes.
So by fix what you may have messed up, is your concern that too much of a cut in taxes could put the state in a situation where it's not collecting sufficient revenue to cover its outflows?
Exactly. And we kind of see that, with the peer, with the PERS retirement system, at some point I just hope that, we can do what's right to make sure, again, that those coming behind us don't have that big of a burden to try to fix something that we didn't take care of today.
I see. There does seem to be some sort of consensus between the chambers on reducing or eliminating the sales tax on grocery. Do you think a standalone bill that just did that would pass?
I think it would. If we just did a standalone bill just on eliminating grocery tax, it would. Because I think, when we look at grocery tax in Mississippi, I think we may be collecting somewhere upward of about $300 million a year. But I think the savings for those consumers, we would get that money back in other areas. Because it means a lot. If you go in there and buy $100 worth of grocery right now, then with the taxes, you're looking at $107. But that $7 to some families could mean, extra meals on the table.
Yeah. So you're right. The amount of total sales taxes collected, last data I looked at on groceries, comes in at just over $400 million. About $315 million of that goes to the state. The rest of it gets diverted to municipalities, and then there's another piece that goes to another purpose, education, I believe, as well. So that would be a hole, perhaps, that you'd have to fill, but we're producing surpluses, and we're on track to produce about a $600 million surplus today.
That's right.
Yeah. The House, however, seems really dead set on full elimination of the income tax. That's their priority, more so than any sort of downward adjustment or elimination of sales tax on groceries.
Yeah. Well, I know that's their stance on it, but, I'm just hoping that that there could be an agreement reached across, where we can work together. And, again, to make sure that we do what's right. And, yesterday news didn't really help that anyway, with the Fed saying that Mississippi would have to pay $101 million back on the welfare monies and things. We got to look at all of those things.
Yeah.
And how much can we really afford to cut? How much can we really afford to do away with without it being a further burden on the taxpayers of Mississippi?
The state auditor hired a third party to come in and do a comprehensive review of, I think, 13 different agencies and make recommendations on how they could improve efficiencies and especially identified lots of spending that was thought to be unnecessary. Have you reviewed that? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I hadn't, just based on, little pieces of stuff that I read about it. But I really didn't get down into see exactly where they said we could save money, how much we could be saved, and those type of things. I just know, at the end of the day, we have to do something. And I know everyone talks about what our neighboring states have done, but nobody really talks about what our neighboring states have done. When we look at taxes, when you look at the sales tax in Louisiana, compared to where we are in Mississippi. When you look at the sales tax in Tennessee and Texas and all of those places who have eliminated the income tax, there's another rise in other taxes. Their sales taxes is 3 to 4% higher than ours. And so I think what they did is said, okay, then we'll cut the taxes over here, raise it over here, therefore we'll be about the same. Well, I don't see that in what we're working on. We're not talking about raising taxes here. The only thing we're talking about is raising the gas tax, and that's for the roads. Well, how do we supplement those other things that on the tax, where we're cutting taxes at? So I just think we really need to think this through before we pull the trigger and say, this is where we're going.
Yeah, and that's, to your point, that's what was proposed in the House version of the bill was an increase in the general sales tax of 1.5%. That entire 1.5% would stay with the cities or the counties where the transaction occurred. Currently, they get 18.5% of the 7% that's levied, and that was considered to be amounts to about $500 million to offset the income tax elimination.
But again, that was passed back to the cities to decide if they wanted to.
Well, they'd have to opt out of it. That's right. Yeah.
And so but then, I could see how that could be taken by a citizen of a city or a town or something. Say, hey, the state lowered my taxes, and now you want to raise it. So there's a net gain. I really didn't save anything. So that goes back to like those other states, Louisiana, I think is 9.5%.
That's right.
Tennessee is 10%.
It's about 9.5% average on the neighboring states.
So,
yeah.
So I think that would be better than to say we just go cut it all out and then.
I got you.
So,
well, if you can hang around, we keep talking.
that's fine with me.
We got Senator Juan Barnett in the Element Wealth studio. We're this committee. Lots of moving parts in this tax discussion, as you indicate. And on the break, you were talking about possible concerns on how federal funding could change the state's finances. We rely significantly, especially in the Medicaid program, some $7 billion we receive from the federal government to operate the state's Medicaid program. We then throw in roughly $1 billion. It's 15% or so of our budget, second behind education, as you know. That's a wild card. Is that being talked about? Is the Division of Medicaid coming over and telling you lawmakers that get ready, we may need some more money?
I'm not on the Medicaid committee, so I can't give you a definitive answer on that, whether they are or not. But I would hope that those conversations are happening.
Yeah.
I would hope that, as this tax cuts affects the whole state of Mississippi, so I'm just hoping that everybody that's part of this is talking.
Okay. I think it's real, and I've had this discussion with Senator Harkins, of course, who runs Senate Finance, and he looks at the whole big picture, and there's some concerns. The Medicaid folks have shared with them that looks like they may be needing additional funding just to operate existing Medicaid without Medicaid expansion, which got a lot of attention this year. Got none last year. Got none this year because I think leadership says, until we have clarity from the federal government where this is all going, it really can't even take up that issue. So that didn't get any traction. Besides the legislation you mentioned in the last segment that your committee took up, what else would you like to see, Senator, with respect to corrections?
As it relates to corrections, I just, my task when we leave this session is to visit all of our facilities again, because I know that some of them are aging, and we have one or two that's probably to the point to where they've aged themselves out, and to come back with a comprehensive plan on next year as to the possible closure of those facilities, because we just can't keep spending huge amounts of taxpayer dollars for the upkeep of these facilities as they continue to age out.
Yeah.
And so that's one big concern of mine. And again, when we start talking about the tax cuts and those type of things, can we afford to keep the operations going in the agencies that we have now with the amount of funding that's going? And education is one of them. And you talk about corrections, when we're looking at about a $420-something million appropriations just to run that agency. If we continue to cut, can we afford to operate? And I think that we just need to be more efficient and more wise on how we spend taxpayer money on some of our aging facilities. So that's something that I will be working on.
Is there any risk to the state of Mississippi and its correctional institutions with respect to any kind of federal investigations, DOJ concerns? At one time that was...
Yeah, I think, but for the most part, with the legislation that we've passed and some of the other things that we've done, we've shown to be, working on the concerns of that they may have had, and I think we've satisfied a lot of those things also. Okay,
so you feel like you're in good shape there?
I think we're in good shape there, but you're never out the woods all the way. But I think so far, we're in pretty good shape.
What about the pay for the custody officers? That's notoriously low, and Commissioner Kane lobbied hard to get some increases there. I think you guys did so, but still lagging somewhat, huh?
We are in some places. But in some places it's not necessarily the pay. It's just getting those people that are qualified to hold those jobs.
Okay.
And with the markets that we have now, everybody's, it's like a bidding war, trying to who's going to pay the most for somebody to come to work, and then as somebody that's looking for work, then they're not looking for these jobs that require them to actually do something 8 hours a day. I want to be paid for 8 hours, but I don't mean I want to work for 8 hours.
Oh, okay. So just finding warm bodies to do the work is as big a problem as anything, huh?
It is. I mean, but it's not just with corrections. I mean, you can ride all over town and see a help wanted sign.
Oh, yeah. It's absolutely true. I mean, that's a problem across the country. The labor market seems to be softening a bit, stabilizing somewhat, so hopefully that situation will just get better and improve. Anything that Commissioner Kane over corrections has come to you and said these are some things we'd like to see the legislature address?
Most of the concerns and things that he's had, we've addressed them. A lot of those are security things that we've taken care of, the pay where we agreed to give the pay, and some other things that he's done that allow the prisoners to just feel better about themselves, and knowing that we're there to help them. And the work release thing that we've worked on together has been one of the biggest turnarounds, we think, with the Department of Corrections.
Okay. So overall, are you pleased with Mr. Kane and his performance?
Overall, we're okay. So
think that's going well?
I think it's going well, yeah.
Are there any plans for facility upgrades, anything notable in the corrections world?
Well, that's what I said earlier. We're going to meet while we're out across the summer.
Okay.
Put together a good comprehensive plan and hopefully present it to the legislature on next year so that going forward we can take care of some of those concerns and things like that.
All right. School choice. Where do you stand on that? There was some legislation mainly that came out of the House, didn't go very far, and this comes up every year, honestly, but nothing happens. How do you feel about that?
I just, I'm a product of a public school, and we have some great public schools out there that are doing a great job.
Yeah.
And I just think, if my whole thing is that if you have a charter school or a private school or whatever it is, and you're saying that the way that they're teaching is working, then why can't we take that same model and put it in a public school and make it work over there as well? And so what I'm saying is that, we're trying to move students to a building, but the building is not what's important. It's what they're getting inside the building is what's important. And so if we all had something that worked for one child or one area, then why can't we apply this across the whole, and then everybody is excelling together versus trying to argue that my model is better than your model. But if it's for the kids, then let's put this together and make it work, regardless of where it is. Whether it's in public school, where the parents want to take the children out of this school district and go to this school district. Why are we running from this? Why can't we come together instead of running from it and come together and come up with a good plan that's good for all of our schools and good for all of our children, therefore it's good for the whole of Mississippi?
You wonder, and I've suggested this on the show many times, Senator, about just taking the high-performing districts and comparing them side by side across just a range of issues, from organizational structure to teacher-student ratio, curricula, just policies, procedures, content, go down the list, grading systems, etc., and try to identify where the gap is between the low-performing and the high-performing, and perhaps the low-performing need to emulate the high-performing.
Exactly. That's what I think. And let's go back to what I said, why just take them out of this area and we put them over here? Because if we don't focus on this low-performing school district at the end of the day, then we're going to have to focus on them when they become adults in society.
I just don't think that anybody's come forward and said, hey, look, I figured it out. Here's the problem. Here's why the low-performing schools or school districts are, in fact, performing at a very low level. I haven't seen anyone say, here's a list of all the things that they need to really work on and improve to produce better outcomes.
And I haven't seen anyone come together, even from a high-performance school district, and say, this is what we do. This is how we make it work. And we're willing to work with our low-performance school district to make it work. Because, again, we want all of our children in Mississippi to have the best education possible. And it shouldn't matter if they're a member or if they're a product of a public school, a charter school, a private school, homeschool. It shouldn't matter. At the end of the day, the concern should be about the education of our children in Mississippi, which is the future of all of us in the state of Mississippi.
Well, we got to go now, but maybe we need to get House and Senate leadership, and including committee chair Rob Robertson over there in the House, Senator Dennis DeBar in the Senate, to come together and perhaps to hold such a summit with the low and select some low and high-performing districts and throw them in a room and let them go through this comparison and start identifying what we can do. Maybe we can do that.
I agree.
All right. Senator Juan Barnett's been our guest in the Element Wealth studio. Thanks for coming on, Senator.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Coming right back.